Thanks for joining us this morning as we explore the question, why Captain America was out of place in our modern world, otherwise known as...
Are old morals relics or a standard?
Yeah, that's a good question. In other words, how was Captain America, a man of the 1940s, out of place in the 21st century? Or why did he, a symbol of traditional values and morality, appear out of place in our modern world? And this is not so much another question about the MCU. It's more of an illustration of where we are with our standards of morality. Do we have standards of morality? What do we base them on? So these are all relevant questions we're going to bring up this morning. We're going to do this more of as a discussion. So if you want to chime in during the live chat and bring up some questions of your own, throw hard questions at us. We love hard questions. And we're just going to be wrestling through these different aspects using kind of the movie of Captain America as an illustrative point on some of these. So what is a moral compass? When we say a shifting moral compass, what do we mean by moral compass? How is that term used? You can define it as a set of beliefs or values that help guide ethical decisions, judgments, and behavior. You can get your moral compass either from an internal sense of what's right or wrong, or from someone or something that is a standard or for guiding moral values and choices and judgments or behavior. Or you can get it out of the bottom of a cereal box. Just dig down far enough. You might find your moral compass in a little plastic package. You just take it out and look and say, should I do this? Yes, no. So what are you going to base, what do you base your moral compass on? How do you know what's right or wrong? And is that something that is self-consistent? Because we should all question this and check it ourselves to see, is what I'm basing my values on, what I'm calling right or wrong, is that conflicting with itself or other things, and how does that work itself out in a big way? So let's look at, there's this video here that I want to bring up for Captain America and take a look at maybe how he based his moral compass, and we can talk about a little bit after we watch the video.
I asked her once how she managed to master diplomacy and espionage in a time when no one wanted to see a woman succeed at either. And she said, compromise where you can. But where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye and say no. You move.
Should you stand firm on these things? Should you be flexible? Should you go with the times and go with the flow? And she also mentioned something there about compromise. There might be some things that you could compromise on. What are those? What are the things that you wouldn't compromise on? But maybe another way to look at this, and I'm going to ask these as a series of questions for you. Have you heard of the term nudge theory?
No.
Okay. Nudge theory is a concept in behavioral science that is a subtle influence that bumps us toward a decision. And it's a decision desired by the one giving a nudge. An example of this would be product placement in a store. It's given a discount, there's lighting, presentation, mood, all this kind of like sets it up. And you walk into a store, a lot of times, especially if it's one that's a lot of maybe a larger store, not just a mom and pop shop, but a chain store, sometimes where things are positioned is set psychologically to kind of get you. It's an end cap. There's right there in your face. It's to present it to get you to make a decision on something like this.
That, or if you're like Walmart, using
that?
multiple sort of techniques, you go in there. Have you ever noticed there's no clocks? There's no clocks. There's no windows.
Oh,
There's no ability to see outside once you're inside.
well, don't they
shopping.
do
They do
that
the
with
same thing with casinos.
the casinos? Yeah.
The casinos are worse because then you got the smoky atmosphere, you got dim lighting, you got a whole bunch of stuff. Try to
Flashing
keep
lights.
try to overload your senses while keeping you contained within, and even the doors themselves are tinted.
Yeah.
So it looks like if you're looking out, it looks like it's dark outside, no matter how bright it is outside. So you're always thinking it's the same time outside, even if you look at the glass doors. So you can very easily lose track of time, lose all your finances, get into debt very quickly.
Are you speaking from experience?
I was talking about Walmart more than casinos.
Oh,
okay,
wow.
fine.
Okay.
No, casinos, you could lose your money too.
That's right. That's right.
How many times have you walked into Walmart for a quick little thing, be like, okay, I'm just going to run in, run out. You go in quick, grab what you want, go in, get out, and half an hour's gone by. And you're like, wait, hold on.
I've seen an illustration of how guys usually do shopping versus how women do shopping, and women, it's like they'll go around. Hey, I just in general, not don't get excited here. In general, so go around and just hit the aisles or whatever. And guys we're hunters, we're not gatherers, right? We go in there and there's that one item we're going to go for. It doesn't mean we don't get distracted, especially if we're hungry. But we go in, we grab that item, and we get out of there. Generally speaking, I don't know. Do you guys find that that's true?
Well, actually, I've seen the opposite when it comes to a different situation.
Okay.
How men play video games, specifically Skyrim.
Oh my God.
It's the opposite. Skyrim, the guys go everywhere. The women just go to the objective to get out.
Okay. All right. I'll take your word for that. I think that's probably true. So I'm going to check the chats right here. And we've got modern. Yeah, here's another question about Sideswipe said, how do you think Captain America reacted to modern time inflation? You know what though?
They didn't really approach it, but yeah, it's been huge for him.
No, well, okay. See, the 40s, 1940s, World War II, you can say it brought us out of the Depression or not, but he would have been really familiar with having gone through the Depression, what that was like.
Yeah.
And there was
prices.
I'm not sure how much inflation played a part of it. I know unemployment and the Dust Bowl was a big part of it. I'm not sure how much inflation did, but that's a good question about some of the modern things that we run into, modern problems. There was a sickness. It was a very, you guys may have heard about this. I don't know if you call it a disease or not. I think it had something to do with people had eaten some kind of shellfish or something. And it was a group of people that had gone into this catatonic state. They weren't really comatose. They were just totally unresponsive. They were awake and aware and unresponsive. And they were locked into this for years. They had been institutionalized. They'd been locked into it for years. And somebody finally figured it out. A doctor took interest in the situation and figured it out. Let me know if I'm wrong, because I might have some of the details wrong about this. But the point was, once they came out of the state, they made comments about, because they remembered how their society was, and then they're finally joining our society. It's almost like a time travel type of thing. And there was points of, I believe it was social contact, a lack of social contact, invested so much in video. And I think it was so much, this was earlier, it was pre-internet, just with TV, just locked in on TV and people just giving their lives over to this. I just look at the changes that we have had in our society with this.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this is the relationship that a lot of people have right here, and not so much in contact with each other.
I mean, just a 50-year jump. Go back 50 years, and you've got huge changes.
This is Thomas Hall's answering the inflation thing. He says, inflation is a real reason he stayed in the past in Endgame.
Well, I can see why.
Oh, I don't know about that. It was his sweetheart, but I can understand the incentive that wanting to be back there. Yeah, some other comments. There's a couple other comments in there I'm gonna leave for later because they're not necessarily relevant to what we're talking about. So this whole idea of nudge theory, what impact of media, advertising, and social influences, what kind of impact does that have on our perceptions of morality and cultural values? And this is kind of an open-ended question. Say that if we say that I'm basing my moral compass on what I feel, on what I feel is right and wrong, then the question that I have is, how much does society influence that, positive or negative? How much does it make it go one direction or the other?
Well, I think the very fact of how he worded that does show some influences beforehand, some nudging beforehand, because it's based off of feelings, how you feel about it. During Captain America's earlier life, and it's even in the film, they did a good job on this. His driving factor wasn't how he felt. The driving factor was he wanted to be patriotic. He wanted to do his service. It wasn't, I want this because it makes me feel good. It was, I want to help.
Right.
It was an outward view compared to an inward view. And I think that by itself is a huge shift, because you had, and now I'm not saying that everyone was like this, but in general with our culture earlier on, it was duty based. It was, you had to do this for the common good, for society, for your friends, for your family. These were obligations you had to do, and you felt a bit of pride in accomplishing and doing it for others.
Yeah, and here's a good question. What did he base his moral compass on? Well, there's a couple of lines in the movies where you think that maybe he might have been a Christian. You don't know for sure. There's that one scene where, and we shared it the last videos that we had here, where he's saying she says, they're basically gods that you're trying to fight against. And he says, there's only one God, ma'am. And he's not, pretty sure he's not dressed like that. And he was talking about Loki and Thor. And so,
but on average, he would have been, a good portion of society back then would have had Christian values, if not Christian themselves.
Right. They would have been at least based on that.
Would have been founded in that, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at another video here in a few minutes where it talks about what happens when the values of America, you believe in these basic values, which America was based on, and what happens when America, the society, changes and you still have these values that you believe in. How are you going to do that? Because you were like, I'm with these guys, and these guys shift on you. They have this Overton window, which we're going to talk about a little bit, shifts. And now you're standing here, and all of a sudden, now you're maybe an extremist because everybody's gone another direction.
There's been quite a few people who have found themselves shifted out of that area that would have once have been considered, and still I would consider, on one side of the group, but now it's shifted so far that they are associated with the other side.
So let's talk about that. The Overton window. This was a term that means the range of policies and politically acceptable to the mainstream population at a given time. So what is in other words, you have this window that's like the centrist. What do you call center? And then you have, well, maybe politically this way or politically that way. They say, well, I'm just middle of the road. I'm just a fence sitter. I'm just going to stay in the middle. I'm not. And it's easy to call these other sides extremes. Say, I'm not that way or this way. I'm just kind of a little bit, just right there in the middle. What happens when the left and the right shift in a certain direction and you try to stay in the middle? You've got to go with them, right?
Yeah.
Or
you become on one side or the other.
Right. So are your morals based on what society says? Because society is not, what they say is the standard shifts over time.
I think a great example of this would be the author of Harry Potter. I forget her name right now.
J.K. Rowling.
Thank you, J.K. Rowling. Is a great example of this. Very pro homosexuality, very pro. I mean, she's changed retcon some of her characters in Harry Potter in order to make them into gay characters. She's gone through this whole shebang, but whenever it came to the transgender issue, she's very firm, said no, women are women and men are men.
Oops.
Because she said that, though, it has shifted to such an extreme. She is now outside of that group.
Yeah, outside the window.
She is completely outside the group, but she's not what I would consider part of the other group either.
Right.
So she's stuck in this sort of limbo because it's shifted so far.
Yeah. So you have here Captain America when he comes to our modern age. And he's standing around. He just woke up. He's in the ice, basically, right? He's like these people that were sick and in this catatonic state, not able to respond. And then finally come out of it. It's like everything has changed. The world I knew no longer existed. So what are you going to do? Are you going to just now go with the flow? Or are you going to stand on your principles that you had before? And this is a question for all of us. Now, it's not just black and white, because there are some things like, what do you do with technology? Okay, so I'm an electrical engineer, I'm a programmer, and I'm very much involved with technology. I've got to keep up with what's happening. I'm very interested. I want to see the latest, greatest thing. I mean, how small can we make these microprocessors? How far down? How many transistors can we get them? How much can we do with these? Can we make our lives easier with this tech in some way or another? So that's cool. Of course, you can go Amish and say, well, forget it all. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stay with my cow.
I'm not going to do it.
And well, maybe there's an advantage to that. But those are some things I think that we can definitely compromise and ride with and get the technology. But the question then is, how are we going to treat it is the other. Is how are we going to use it? Are we going to use it in a way that's going to compromise ourselves? Just think about the increase of porn.
Yeah.
When I was a kid,
it's such a problem. I was at a marriage seminar last weekend. Just me and my wife went and had a good time. But that's one of the things they covered was the increase in porn and addiction and how bad it is, and how now even atheists are now warning, saying, stop it. This is bad. This is destructive to the human mind. This is destructive to our relationships. This is destructive. And it's because it's so convenient. It's right there. I mean, literally pick up your phone, type a couple words in, there you go.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh.
Very, very dangerous.
So confession time. I've had a problem with porn in the past. And when I was a kid, my dad had Playboy magazines. Now, this is way back. Okay, so we're talking back. Don't look at me like that. The dark ages back in the 70s.
Somebody's got a walker.
Yeah. Well, okay. So it wasn't that long ago. So back in the 70s, yeah, it was a long time ago. Back in the 70s, that was basically what was available. So in the 80s and stuff like that. And I remember you could. They had age limits. I mean, in the back of the counter, stuff like these magazines would be there. And as a kid, I couldn't come up at a convenience store or whatever and say, hey, I want to buy that magazine. They cart me. They say, okay, kid, no, go run home, go play baseball or something, stop that. And there would be a block to do it. And it's that much of a barrier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are just flat out pictures versus video or whatever.
Yep. That's what we have now, video, right. And it's on demand.
And so then you have the advent of the computers, and you can get the images on computers. Okay. Bring on the internet. Now, open the floodgates.
Massive issues.
And now that we have here in our hot little hands, basically the same portal, accessible to anybody, children, kids can get a hold of this stuff now. So, and then I'm not saying anything new. You guys all know this, but it's just, that's another example maybe of the shift. And how has that changed our morals? Just the availability of porn. I'm thinking about, you were talking about the shifting window, Overton window concerning LGBTQIA++, whatever. And this progressive ideal that progresses us on and on, saying we're progressing. Yeah, but you're progressing over a cliff. Dude, look, death.
All progression is not good.
Yeah, that's right. So
sometimes there's good reasons why there might be a fence around a place.
Let's put on the brakes, okay? So just take a moment and let's review what the shift has been. In the 1970s or so, the government, the mantra was, get the government out of our bedrooms. We don't want to have a government telling us what we can and cannot do. As two consenting adults, right? That was where the moral was to do that. Okay, well, all right. So then it became tolerated. In the 1990s, the 80s and 90s, there was a push for gay acceptance. So it became no longer just what's in the bedroom, but publicly acceptable. In the 2000s, there was a push for gay marriage, getting government back into the bedroom and making our bedroom public until it became legally sanctioned. So whoa, put on the brakes. What were we doing in the 70s? Is it get the government? If that's the standard, you're going to say it's like, hey, this is private, two consenting adults. Don't look. We're just doing our own thing, okay? Don't pay attention. All right, you got an argument. I can understand where you're coming from there, but then to say we're now going to take that and that is now publicly sanctioned on this, that's a 180-degree turn. In the 2000s and 10s, there was the rise of the T's, LGBT. QIA plus, and just add whatever letters you want onto it after that. So now it's not just tolerated, acceptable, promoted, legally sanctioned. It's legally sanctioned. Now we're getting to a part it's promoted, and it's promoted over the original.
And taught in classes and taught to children. And
it has to be done.
Yeah, it has to.
And if you say otherwise, now the law is going to be against you. So this has been a complete 180 of the original argument that was given to start us down this slope. So how else has the Overton window shifted over time and influencing our ideas of what's right or wrong, what's considered acceptable or taboo? How else has this been done?
Well, one of the things just on this topic here, one of the things that I have seen, and I found this to be very interesting because the shifting is something, and it's not just something we're noticing looking in, but something that even the people who have done the marches definitely early on are looking back saying, whoa, wait, hold on here. I didn't sign up for all this. Watched a video not too long ago about basically a lesbian who did the marches, went for this. Yeah, get him out of the bedroom. Let's do this. And now she's sitting there making a video saying, if I would have known where it was going to go, I would never have marched. I regret doing this.
Yeah, look at how much look through history, and yeah, there has been homosexuality accepted in history and so forth over time here or there, but for the most part, no. And especially when we start getting to the transgender stuff, and this is like, oh, of course, this is obvious. No, it's not. Look at history. We've got other cultures that are laughing at us, non-Western cultures that are saying, what's wrong with you guys? And I say, I don't know. What's made the change?
Well, so I think the change really goes back to, if it feels good, do it. And that's where the morals come from. That's where we get to see this shift. I think that's something that was put into, and I think they targeted children earlier on. In fact, every time I see this, I look back at history, and I remember a German guy with a little bit of a mustache here saying, oh yeah, let them have the old people. Give me the young people. Give me the next generation. Give me their youth. Because he knew that's how to shift a culture, is by targeting kids and by getting them to think the way you want them to think. you can then make a completely new culture that's alien to the first generation.
Yeah. I'm amazed at how quickly. I would not have guessed 20 years ago. I would say we would eventually get to this point, but I would not. I would have thought it would have taken a couple more generations to get us to this location. I didn't think it was going to take so long.
No, I mean, this opens up. So if you feel good and it doesn't hurt anyone, then do it. And again, that's just a small step away from if it feels good, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just open. Who cares if it hurts someone? Bet. So I don't know if they'll take that step or not. But I mean, this opens up quite a bit of can of worms, because then you've got a culture that, I mean, even if it does hurt someone, I mean, you got abortion.
Yeah.
It's convenience. If it's inconvenient, if you don't want that child, if it doesn't feel good, get rid of it.
Wow. I want to touch on the whole question. It feels good, do it. And then also the general golden rule of Western culture is you can do anything as long as it doesn't hurt someone else. It's open game. You can do it. And we'll talk about that again here in a minute. But I want to bring up a chat here. This is from Thomas Hall. He says, I see the rise of the nuns as a good thing long term. American Christianity of many generations back was largely followed by nominal Christians with little depth. It's good that it needs rebirth. Thomas, I'm going to ask if you could maybe clarify that a little bit. I'm going to try to rephrase what you're saying to see if I understand it. Maybe you can help me out here too. Is what you're saying is that the increase of darkness has caused nominal Christians to make a stand, define where we are, to say, okay, this is real, guys. We can't just go with the flow. This is we got to get serious about this. I wonder if that's what you're saying. Keith Green, who was a Christian musician years ago, had a song that was saying, talking about us being asleep in the light, and we have this divine knowledge through the word, through Jesus, that we're aware of. But even being aware of that, we have to be responsive and not just numb to the world that's going on. And maybe a contrast here is what's needed. I think you're right. C.S. Lewis said that the closer you get to the end of an age, the more obvious who is serving God and who is not. As there is the increase of darkness, the light then has that much more potential. You're driving down the road and during noon, and someone has their high beams or their brights on, and they pass you. It's like, it's a guy who got his lights on for it. But it's at nighttime, that makes a bit of a difference. You're almost blinding you. Oh, you turn those things off. So that could be the case. So there's a couple more comments I have. One more last comment I have about the Overton window. One thing that's shifted is, if you look at abortion, one of the things that was used as a sort of a litmus test in 1973, they said, well, we're not even sure. I can understand wanting to know where this line is and of where human life begins. And they said, well, if the baby is viable, then the baby is no longer solely dependent on the mother. The question of viability is that you can't, if the baby is liable, you cannot kill the child. You cannot terminate the pregnancy. But beforehand, you could. So, but the problem with that is the question of liability changed as our technology changed.
And geographical location even then.
Well, how do you mean?
Well, like if you're in the middle of the mountains in West Virginia, viability might be slightly different than if you're in like downtown LA next to the hospital.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the viability changes where your location is. Does that mean the point of life changes by geographical location? It makes little sense to me.
Well, I think what they were saying is just if the baby can survive outside the womb unassisted on his or her own, then that's what they're talking about, viability. But then really on the baby, even a newborn, just being placed by itself over, I don't know, in a crib and just left, it wouldn't take long for that child to expire.
If I locked up my house and went off and went away for a month, my 4-year-old would most likely be dead by the time I got back. Right? I mean, he's not at the point. Could he survive a little bit on his own? Sure, he might be able to work it out, might be able to scrounge some food out, but he's not going to be able to provide for himself. He's not going to be able to. What does viable really mean? If you're saying completely independent of the parents, well, you know what? That takes some time.
Yeah.
And there's even teenagers that would be classified as not viable.
You mean some adults are not be viable?
Some adults might not be viable.
I'm not viable if you drop me naked in Antarctica. I would not survive very long. So it's a question of viability.
Yeah. So that line really led to a lot more issues.
Here's the point with the line too, and then Thomas rephrased what he said, or clarified what he said here, because I'm going to get that in a second. But the question of viability used to be a litmus test to say, beyond this point, it would be wrong to kill the child. Before this point, you can kill the child. But that's no longer being used. I don't hear viability as part of the argument for abortion at all. It's all rights of the mother. As long as that child is in her body, she can kill her own child.
Well, even afterwards, in some places.
Even afterwards, they talked about that too, infanticide.
So, yep. So, the problem with that is, as far as the loosey-goosey sort of viability, just being able to survive outside the womb through medical intervention, because you'll have to use medical equipment no matter what, that had moved back to such a level that they could no longer justify it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many weeks back it goes now, but it goes back quite a bit. So viability is out the door to say, doesn't matter.
They don't want to
my
use
body,
that.
my choice. I can just do whatever I want. And okay, I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but the point is that the window we see a shifting even in the argument for abortion. So Thomas Hall replied, and I believe he's clarifying what he mentioned earlier. He said, the people that call themselves Christian, go to church twice a year, don't live as Christians, etc. I'd rather see those people honest and claim none. Okay. I see what you're talking about.
We thought that's what you were going
the nuns. But. So he's not talking about the nuns' black habits.
No, it's a different type of nun.
A different type of nun, right. So these nuns then, these none of the aboves, or I'm not really a Christian, I'm just kind of like culturally Christian or whatever, it would be better to just be honest about it and say, no, I'm just kind of playing. I'm role playing. I'm LARPing here, right? Just live action role playing. Not really serious about it, because when the rubber hits the road, are they really going to live through it or not? When challenged in their faith, are they going to continue going through? They're going to
crumble.
Yeah, and so Jesus does address this in Revelation, talking about, which church was it? He said, I'd rather you be hot or cold, but since you're lukewarm, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. You're neither one or the other. Let's be honest about it. So yeah, good point. And with the increasing darkness of the world, you do have that clarified more, because you can see that light better.
You see someone who celebrates Easter versus someone who wishes you happy transgender Visual Awareness Day.
Yeah.
Biden.
Yeah. So let's take a look at what the Bible says. We have in Ephesians. I got it marked wrong on the bottom there. It says Genesis. No, this is Ephesians 6:10. It says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, having done all to stand firm. Stand, therefore. So the word stand it comes up 4 times in this passage. If you put withstand, that's in there as well. So we have this armor, and there is a point of going on the offense, but here it's more clearly saying defense.
And there's a point where you need to be flexible as well and know when to stand and when not to. When to stand on something being absolutely true, you have to stand on this.
Correct.
And being discerning,
yes,
relying on the Holy Spirit to say, no, this is not something we have to stand on. But if it's something the Bible says, you know what, this is detestable, this is an abomination before the Lord, this is something that is extremely cancerous for your culture, for yourselves, for those participating in it, okay, you need to stand.
Right. And that does say that here. If you look at it's actually the following verse of 14 where it talks about the feet fit with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In your standing, where you're planting yourself, that's based on the word.
Yep.
And all this is actually kind of based on the word of God too, with the sword of the Spirit and so forth, which is the word of God. So all these things, there is something about standing for what you believe in, and as the world comes around and is buffeting, is changing, that Overton window is shifting left and right, you're standing firm. Again, having the discernment to know what to compromise on and what not to. I'm going to take a look at this video again. And this is what we were looking at earlier. And I want to go through that again with the funeral scene and listen to what she says about standing. And then we're going to go right into another video where it shows Captain America doing an example of making a stand. What do you do? What do you do when the world around you shifts and you still have these principles that you're guiding on? He believed in the United States. He believed in what the principles of the United States, but the United States shifted, at least in this regard. It was not so much the U.S., it was SHIELD that has shifted. He believed in the principles of SHIELD. SHIELD shifted. It had changed, but he stayed firm in what he was. He could have just wrote it. He could just stayed with them, say, hey, I'm just going to go with the flow, right?
Yep.
But he stood firm.
I asked her once how she managed to master diplomacy and espionage in a time when no one wanted to see a woman succeed at either. And she said, compromise where you can. But where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree. Look them in the eye and say no. You move.
Okay, so that was the message. Here we got the application.
Finally, we're here, and the world should be grateful.
Attention all SHIELD agents. This is Steve Rogers. You've heard a lot about me over the last few days. Some of you were even ordered to hunt me down.
But I think it's time you know the truth. SHIELD is not what we thought it was. It's been taken over by Hydra.
Alexander Pierce is their leader. The Strike and Insight crew are Hydra as well. We don't know how many more.
But I know they're in the building.
They could be standing right next to you. They almost have what they want. Absolute control.
They shot Nick Fury.
And it won't end there.
If you launch those helicarriers today,
Hydra will be able to kill anyone that stands in their way.
unless we stop them. I know I'm asking a lot. The price of freedom is high. It always has been. And it's a price I'm willing to pay. And if I'm the only one, then so be it. But I'm willing to bet I'm not.
So here we have an example of him standing firm. Stand. And there is a point of taking and being aggressive and going on the offensive. But I think in our world, mostly, we are talking about.
Please silence all phones before the beginning of the video.
Yeah. I have it on Do Not Disturb, went longer. Okay. So, but standing firm on what we believe, and that does make quite a difference. So I appreciate your input. I think that we had a pretty good discussion on this. It's not easy living. You might just be alone. You might be like Captain America there, say, I might be the only one doing it.
I think that is actually a common lie of the enemy, that we're alone. The answer is we're not. We're not. Although they definitely with some of these groups, they put the mantra, you're all by yourself, you're on the wrong side of history. Everyone else is supporting this. Everyone agrees on this. The answer is actually no. Not a lot of us do. Not a lot of us agree on this. I've had conversations with people. Actually, it's been a little while, but my stance hasn't changed. With homosexuality being a sin. I'm talking about the act of homosexual desires are not itself acting upon it is. That being a sin, that act being wrong.
Well, but unless at any regard, if you're rehearsing those or giving into lustful thoughts in general, that's also
wrong,
right?
But I've had conversations with people, and they've assumed that this has been a done deal, that everyone agrees with them.
Yeah,
and the very fact that I would just stay there and say, no, it's wrong. You guys might have assumed that you guys have won and just moved on. But I'm still standing back here saying, no, this is still wrong. So know that you're not always alone.
Yeah, you're not. You are not. And hopefully that's a message of hope that we can give to people out there, that for those of you who are standing firm, you are not alone. And you can stand with confidence before the throne of God and hopefully hear his voice. Well done, my good and faithful servant, entering into your rest. Thomas Hall said, I've noticed that my best days, I have an effect on those around me, believer and not by overt preaching, but just by being a light in the world. And it always blows my mind when I recognize it. Yeah, that is so true. So true. I don't know how many times I've been in a situation, a work environment or whatever, where people will come up to me and maybe, a guy is just going through a divorce. He says, man, I just need someone to talk to. And they know that they can come and talk to you because you're going to be honest with them. You're not going to give them the platitude that someone else in the world is giving or something. They'll come to you, even come to you for prayer. That's pretty amazing, I think. So, yep. Coming up, we have put it up here. This is in response to a discussion that we had that I saw in the chats, and this is a couple of guys were going back and forth in the chat in a response to a previous video, and they were talking about the curse after the fall in the Garden of Eden, talking about where our jobs are. Is my job a curse? We're going to delve into that. We're going to look at this question and we're going to discuss it coming up and say, God cursing the ground. Where's all this coming from? What does that mean for us? And what does that mean for my job and the fallout of just my daily activities? And I think it's going to be a good discussion. Looking forward to it. And hopefully we can get some good response from you guys as well, like we did today on this. So until then, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you then.